It was supposed to be a normal Monday morning at Hexadynamics. The office buzzed with casual urgency, heels clicked across polished floors, voices murmured over double-shot lattes, and giant digital screens glowed with charts, graphs, and deadlines. The air conditioning hummed low, just enough to keep the glass-walled workspace feeling sterile but sophisticated. Everyone was in motion, everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone except her. She stood silently near the back wall of the open floor. Her skin was the color of polished mahogany, her hair pulled into a tight coil at the base of her neck. Her blouse was simple, pale blue and buttoned all the way up. Her slacks weren't tailored, and her sneakers had clearly walked many miles. She didn't carry a briefcase or a laptop. No badge clipped to her belt. She was an anomaly in a place where status symbols were worn like armor. Most people passed her with a glance, assuming she was lost, or shadowing someone from HR. A few whispered guesses, maybe a friend of the cleaning staff? Maybe someone's cousin? But no one said anything out loud. No one except Elijah. Elijah Renshaw noticed her the moment she walked in. He always noticed new people. Tall, sharply dressed in a fitted charcoal suit, and a silk tie that screamed money without having to say a word, Elijah was the kind of guy who believed charm was a currency, and he'd always been rich. He leaned back in his chair, draping one arm over the back like a throne. His team sat around him, younger analysts and interns who fed off his every word. He thrived on their attention, especially when it came with a side of fear. "Yo," he called out, nodding toward the woman. "Who let the cafeteria staff onto the main floor?" His voice wasn't subtle. It never was. The laughter that followed was half-hearted, awkward, like everyone wanted to laugh but didn't want to be caught doing it. The woman turned her head slowly. Her eyes met Elijah's. She didn't look away. Elijah grinned wider. "I mean seriously, she looks like she walked straight out of the maintenance wing. Someone tell her the uniform swap was last week." The woman took a step toward the coffee station. No response. No smile. Just silence. She poured herself a cup of black coffee and stood quietly, as though his words hadn't touched her at all. That only made it worse. "Damn," Elijah muttered. "This one's got nerves of steel. Or just no clue. Maybe lay off," whispered one of the interns, trying to focus on his screen. But Elijah was already standing. He walked over slowly, letting his footsteps echo through the high-ceilinged space. When he stopped beside her, he reached past her to grab a Coke from the mini fridge. She didn't move. "Hey," he said casually, cracking the can open. "You're not supposed to be here, you know. This is a secure area." She turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge him, and spoke for the first time. "I'm aware." He blinked. "Are you now?" She nodded. "Very. Well then, why are you still standing here? You think this is some kind of open house?" She sipped her coffee unfazed. "I'm just visiting." "Visiting what? Your fantasy of working in an office like this? Because unless you've got some kind of miracle resume, I'd suggest you head back to wherever you came from." Her eyes met his again, calm, unreadable. "I see." Elijah rolled his eyes. "Jesus. You really don't know how things work here, do you?" He stepped back and looked her up and down dramatically. "Let me guess. Somebody's social experiment? Charity case?" She placed the cup back on the counter. Calmly. Precisely. It was that calm that set him off. That refusal to react. He wanted her flustered. Embarrassed. But she just stood there. "You know what?" he said, half laughing. "Since you like Coke so much, here." And in one sudden, stupid motion, he tossed the can toward her. It wasn't meant to be a full throw. Just enough to scare her. Just enough to get a reaction. But the metal hit her shoulder, hard. Cold soda exploded across her blouse, splattering down her front and dripping onto the floor. The entire office fell into stunned silence. Even Elijah froze. The woman didn't flinch. Didn't raise her voice. She looked down at the spreading stain across her blouse, then back up at Elijah. Her expression didn't change. For a few eternal seconds, no one moved. Then came the sound. A soft, unmistakable ding from the elevator. Heads turned. The glass doors slid open. Out walked a man in his early 50s, tall, commanding, dressed in a tailored dark suit and polished shoes that didn't make a sound as he moved. His presence shifted the air immediately. Executives straightened their backs. Conversations died mid-sentence. CEO Malcolm Dwyer. He saw the woman first. His entire face changed. He strode forward with purpose. "Danielle," he said, voice warm and full of joy. "You're here." And then, before anyone could process what was happening, he walked up to her, coke-soaked shirt and all, and gently kissed her on the cheek. "Sorry I wasn't downstairs to meet you," he said. Every breath in the room held still. She smiled for the first time. "No trouble, love. I was just getting a lay of the land." Malcolm's arm went around her waist. Elijah stepped back, eyes darting between them like someone waking up inside a nightmare. The CEO's smile faded as he turned to the stunned crowd. "Can someone please tell me what happened here?" he asked, voice sharp now. "And why my wife's blouse is soaked in soda?" No one spoke. No one could. Elijah's mouth opened, but no words came out. Danielle turned slightly toward him. Her voice was soft, but every syllable sliced clean through the room. "He decided I didn't belong. And made sure I knew it." Malcolm's gaze fixed on Elijah now. And the room felt 20 degrees colder. For a long, excruciating moment, no one spoke. Elijah stood still, shoulders stiff, like his body didn't quite know whether to run, apologize, or pretend it was all a misunderstanding. His confidence, once bloated and smug, now looked paper-thin. The office space, usually humming with background chatter and clicking keyboards, had gone completely silent, like the building itself was holding its breath. The CEO's eyes didn't waver from Elijah. His arms still wrapped protectively around Danielle, who stood with quiet composure, the soda still dripping slowly down her blouse and pooling on the tile beneath her shoes. She hadn't moved to wipe it away. Her stillness was louder than any outburst could have been. "Elijah," Malcolm said, voice low, almost dangerous. "What exactly happened here?" Elijah's mouth opened, his voice thin and cracking. "Sir, I didn't realize who she was." Malcolm blinked, slow and deliberate. "So you did throw a Coke at her?" Elijah hesitated, then tried to backpedal. "No, I mean, I didn't throw it at her. It was more of a joke. Just messing around." Danielle tilted her head. "That was a joke?" Elijah faltered again. "I mean, not like that, it wasn't supposed to hit you." "But you opened it," she said calmly. "And then threw it. In front of your entire team. Look, I didn't mean anything personal, all right? I just thought you were maybe someone shadowing or a janitor? A caterer? Housekeeping?" Her voice never rose, but each word carried weight. Elijah's voice dropped, losing momentum. "It was just a misunderstanding." Malcolm's eyes narrowed. "Was it? Because what I see is a senior-level strategist humiliating a guest, hurling a drink across the floor, and now fumbling for a justification that sounds dangerously close to prejudice." Elijah's face turned red. He looked around desperately, as if anyone might step in. But the office stood frozen, heads down, lips shut. Some people looked ashamed. Others just afraid. Danielle spoke again, her tone sharper now. "You didn't ask who I was. You didn't treat me with professional courtesy. You made assumptions. You mocked me. You threw a drink at me. And the only reason you regret it now is because of who I turned out to be." Elijah took a deep breath, trying to find his balance. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize. Honestly, if I'd known." "That's exactly the problem," she said, stepping forward, soaked blouse and all. "You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me with respect." His eyes dropped. "You're right," he muttered. She studied him for a long second. "Do you know how many people stood and watched? Do you know how many laughed at your jokes before the can was thrown?" He didn't answer. Too many, she said. And that's not just a reflection of you. That's a reflection of this culture. She turned her head slightly, addressing the silent staff now. What happened to me isn't just about one man. It's about what's tolerated, what's ignored, what's brushed off as banter or personality. Jamie, the receptionist, finally spoke up from her desk, voice shaky. I tried to say something. Danielle met her eyes and nodded gently. I know you did. Malcolm took a step forward now, voice rising just enough to fill the space. This company was built on innovation, transparency, and inclusion. Not elitism. Not arrogance. And not humiliation. If those values have been corrupted at any level of this organization, it's my failure as a leader, and it stops today. Elijah cleared his throat. Sir, I've led some of our highest performing teams. My accounts are solid. I've delivered. You've delivered numbers. Malcolm interrupted, his voice stern now. But you've also delivered an example to this entire floor that cruelty is permissible if the target seems beneath you. That kind of leadership poisons everything it touches. Danielle looked at him one more time. And you thought I wouldn't matter? A security officer appeared near the elevator, likely summoned minutes ago by someone behind the scenes. Quietly, professionally. Everyone saw him. Elijah saw him. His last shred of composure began to crack. I've been here 5 years, Elijah said, voice thickening. You're going to throw all that away for a single mistake? Danielle's expression was calm but unrelenting. No, you did. The silence afterward was heavy. No one moved as the security officer walked forward. Elijah glanced around again, one final time, but there were no allies left. Even the interns who once laughed at his jokes were now stone-faced, their eyes carefully avoiding his. He exhaled slowly, then turned, his shoulders hunched in a way that hadn't existed when the day began. The officer didn't touch him, just walked alongside him toward the elevator. As the doors closed behind him, the tension in the room didn't ease. If anything, it deepened. Malcolm stood still for a long beat, then turned to his wife. Are you all right? She nodded. It's not the first time I've been underestimated. But this one hit differently. Because it happened here? Because it happened like this, in a place you believed was safe. He gave a slight nod. His voice was lower now, more private. This was never supposed to happen. I trusted the culture we built would protect everyone, not just the suits. Maybe, she said. But culture isn't what you put on slides in board meetings. It's what happens when no one's watching. It's what people let happen. The employees behind them stood in quiet shame, still digesting the moment. One man, Kevin, from business operations, took a step forward and quietly picked up a rag from the kitchenette, kneeling to wipe up the spilled Coke from the floor. It wasn't much. But it was something. Danielle turned and looked across the room once more. Her voice, steady and firm, echoed through the space. Let today be the last time this company confuses titles with worth. And with that, she walked toward the glass corridor, coffee forgotten, clothes still sticky, but dignity entirely intact. Everyone watched her go, not because of who she was married to, but because she had just revealed every mask in the room. The building was quieter than usual the next day. Meetings were postponed. Hallways that were usually brimming with chatter felt like they were waiting to exhale. The incident had traveled faster than any company-wide email ever could. People whispered in corners, glancing toward the elevator like it might open and drop another bombshell. No one said Elijah's name out loud, but everyone was thinking it. By noon, HR had officially confirmed his suspension. Access revoked. Desk cleared. The open-plan workspace where he once held court now sat eerily empty, a ghost spot in the middle of a sea of desks. No farewell. No defense. No send-off. Just silence. But what no one could ignore, what was on everyone's mind, wasn't just what Elijah had done. It was who he had done it to. Danielle Dwyer? The CEO's wife. Some employees had known Malcolm was married. Fewer had ever seen her. And almost no one had imagined she would look the way she did. Or act the way she did. Not a whisper of privilege. No flash. No badge of importance. She'd walked in like any other visitor, quiet, observant, unnoticed. Until she wasn't. And then there were the questions. Whispers turned into theories. Why had she come that day, of all days? Why quietly, without announcement? Why not as a VIP? Why not escorted, introduced, protected? What nobody expected was the answer. It came in the form of an internal company-wide meeting, announced with only a few hours' notice. Mandatory attendance. Conference Room Alpha, the largest on the 12th floor, filled up quickly. Executives from every department. Junior associates. Admin staff. Even the on-site ID team. No one dared skip. The air was thick with tension as people settled into chairs. Some fidgeted. Others stared straight ahead. Eyes darted to the front, where Malcolm stood alone, dressed in a navy blazer and no tie, hands clasped in front of him. But when Danielle walked in a moment later, the room held its breath. She wasn't dressed in anything flashy. A simple black blouse. A long beige coat. Her hair down this time, soft curls framing her calm, controlled expression. She didn't take the stage. Instead, she stood beside her husband. When she spoke, her voice was even and clear, not loud, not emotional, but grounded with a weight that was impossible to ignore. Yesterday, she began. I came here not to observe your workflows, or evaluate performance metrics. I came here to understand something deeper. No slides. No presentation. Just her voice. I've been hearing my husband speak for years about this company. About the culture you're building. The passion. The teamwork. The innovation. But I wanted to see it from the ground floor, unfiltered, unpolished. So I asked to visit quietly. No name tag. No titles. No announcement. She paused. And what I witnessed was not a failure of one man. It was a window into the assumptions and silences that still live in this building. The room remained absolutely still. Some of you laughed. Some looked away. One or two tried to stop it quietly. But most of you did what people have been taught to do, nothing, Her eyes scanned the room. That's the real problem. Not the coke. Not the words. The silence. The permission. The passivity. She turned slightly to Malcolm now. My husband built this company. He believed in it. He still does. But no amount of revenue or IPO valuation can cover up a culture that tolerates casual cruelty. Malcolm stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud either, but it was firm. And for that, I take full responsibility. Some people looked shocked to hear that. Others nodded slowly. He continued. When Danielle told me she wanted to visit, I thought it would be an inspiring surprise for her. I didn't realize it would be a mirror held up to our blind spots. But that mirror doesn't lie. He glanced at his wife before speaking again. She wasn't here to check boxes. She was here because culture is not written on walls. It's written in actions. And yesterday, our actions failed her. There was a pause before Danielle stepped forward again. I know this room holds good people. I saw it in the way some of you looked uncomfortable. I saw it in the eyes of one receptionist who tried to speak up, even though her voice shook. I even saw it in the quiet regret that fell over the room after the can hit me. Her voice caught slightly but didn't break. She breathed once and continued. I'm not here to punish. I'm here to challenge you. She stepped away from Malcolm now and took the center of the room. What will you do when no one is watching? When you don't know who someone is? When the cost of speaking up might make you unpopular? Because that's when culture is decided. Not when things are easy, but when they're uncomfortable. From the back row, someone raised a hand. It was Kevin, from Ops. May I ask, what happens now? Danielle smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. What happens now is up to all of us. She paused, then added, but for my part, I'm not just a visitor anymore. I've accepted Malcolm's request to step into a more official role here. One focused on exactly this: culture, values, accountability. I'll be leading a new internal initiative. And we're not starting with workshops or memos. She reached into her coat pocket and held up a small notebook. We're starting with stories. I want to hear yours. All of them. Anonymous or not. What you've witnessed. What you've tolerated. What's made you proud. What's made you feel invisible. Jamie, the receptionist, shifted forward in her seat, watching her closely. Danielle nodded toward her. You spoke up. That matters. You're why I believe this company can be better. Another hand rose, this time from a newer associate, nervous, fidgeting. What about people who've stayed silent in the past? Can they still be part of the solution? Danielle didn't hesitate. Silence is forgivable. Repeating it isn't. She held the gaze of the entire room. No one is being asked to be perfect. But you are being asked to be better. Starting now. And just like that, she closed her notebook and handed out a stack of blank forms. Not compliance surveys. Not HR audits. Just space. Space for truth. Space for change. Malcolm placed a hand on her back as she returned to his side, then addressed the room one last time. This company doesn't just need strong numbers. It needs strong people. And if you're ready to help build that, Danielle will be leading the way. The meeting ended not with applause, but with reflection. People didn't rush out. They sat quietly, writing, thinking. Some even approached her directly, not to apologize, but to thank her. She had arrived quietly, without rank or spotlight. But she left with every eye following her, not because of who she was married to, but because of the truth she had forced them all to see. 2 weeks passed, but the ripples hadn't stopped. The Coke incident became more than office gossip, it became a reckoning. No one was reprimanded with a corporate scolding or buried under red tape. Instead, something else happened, something more unsettling, more permanent. Change had arrived, and it came with a calm voice and a piercing memory. No one could forget the look on Danielle's face that day, not because of outrage or tears, but because of the unbearable stillness she carried after being hit with a can by someone who never imagined she could matter. Elijah never came back. His desk remained empty for 3 days before it was finally packed into boxes and quietly removed. IT scrubbed his login. HR moved his files. No announcement. No LinkedIn farewell post. Just absence. A man who once believed he was too essential to replace had vanished without ceremony. His name became a cautionary whisper. New interns were told about him like a campfire story. Don't be an Elijah. And yet, his absence wasn't the loudest part. Danielle was. Not by voice, but by presence. She came back to the office, this time without coffee spills or surprise entrances. She returned as the newly appointed Chief Culture Officer. A title the company had never considered before. A position created not for PR, but for reckoning. Her office was on the executive floor, but she spent most of her time elsewhere, hallways, break rooms, even shadowing entry-level employees during morning meetings. People didn't know how to act around her at first. Some were overly polite. Others awkwardly overcompensated. A few tried to disappear whenever she walked in. But she didn't seem interested in judgment. She just observed. Listened. Asked quiet questions that made people stop and think. One afternoon, she walked into the second-floor marketing bullpen and sat beside Jamie, the receptionist. Jamie stood up immediately. Mrs. Dwyer, Chief Dwyer, do you need anything? Danielle smiled, shook her head. I need 5 minutes of honesty. Jamie blinked. Okay. Danielle sat beside her and folded her hands in her lap. What did it feel like in that moment when you saw what Elijah did? Jamie hesitated. Like, I wanted to disappear. I felt sick. But you said something. Not enough. Danielle nodded. Do you know how rare that is? That you spoke up even a little? Jamie looked away. It didn't stop anything. But it mattered, Danielle said gently. You planted a seed. The question is, what are you willing to do now? Jamie looked back at her, slower this time. Anything. Later that day, an internal email went out from Jamie's inbox, signed jointly by her and Danielle. It invited staff to the first of many mirror sessions, open floor forums, no hierarchy, where stories were shared and truths were aired. It wasn't required. There were no performance scores attached. But the first session packed the conference room. People cried. People confessed. One senior associate admitted to ignoring past harassment complaints. A junior designer shared how she'd been spoken over in every meeting since her hiring. And when someone asked, "Are we just airing dirty laundry for show?" Danielle stood up and said, "This isn't for show. This is the rinse cycle." After a few weeks, something shifted. Supervisors started asking different kinds of questions. Not just deadlines and KPIs, but, "How are things with your team?" and, "Is everyone heard here?" Managers who once avoided confrontation now took accountability seriously. And those who couldn't adapt, quietly left. The company handbook was rewritten. Policies became people-focused. HR stopped being feared and started being trusted. The snack room bulletin board no longer held generic motivational posters but anonymous stories submitted by employees. Stories of mistakes, of courage, of being seen. And Danielle? She never stopped walking. She joined onboarding sessions and said, "Don't let this place change your values. Let your values change this place." She visited the janitorial team and asked about their shift patterns, then adjusted the lighting schedules so they weren't stuck in dim hallways at night. She took coffee with interns, ate lunch with admin staff, declined every executive-only dinner. Malcolm watched all of it. Not as a husband, but as a leader who realized his company had been quietly failing under a shiny surface. One evening, long after most people had left, he found her in the cafe area, sitting by herself, laptop open, fingers moving slowly over the keyboard. "You've built something," he said, walking over with a gentle smile. She looked up. "Not yet. But we're getting closer." He pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "You were right. The culture we thought we had, it only lived in memos." Danielle leaned back. "It wasn't your fault. Not entirely. I should have seen it," he replied, voice heavy. "Should have felt it in the spaces people were too afraid to fill." "You can't feel silence," she said softly. "Not until it erupts." He looked down. "You regret stepping in?" She closed her laptop. "No. I regret that I had to." He nodded. "Elijah's still applying to firms, by the way. I got a reference request this morning." "What did you say?" "I told the truth." She didn't ask for details. She didn't need them. Before they left, Malcolm reached into his pocket and handed her a folded paper. She opened it. It was one of the anonymous stories from the bulletin board, written in neat, nervous handwriting. "I watched something awful happen, and I said nothing. Then I saw someone brave enough to stand soaked in soda and still carry more dignity than the man who threw it. That day changed how I see the world, and myself. She read it twice. Then folded it, placed it gently in her bag. The next morning, she posted it on the main screen in the lobby under a bold heading. "Culture isn't who we say we are. It's who we are when no one's watching." Below that quote, in smaller text, she added, "Written by an anonymous employee who decided to stop being silent." From that day forward, everyone who entered the building, clients, visitors, executives, saw it before they saw anything else. It was no longer a company trying to look ethical. It was becoming one. And it all started the moment a man threw a can at someone he thought didn't matter. Only to discover she was the voice that would change everything.